Now, 2 years back, the horrifying story of 8-year-old Wadeema sent shockwaves through the country. The young Emirati girl was tortured to death by her father and his girlfriend.
Now, the case laid bare how vulnerable children can be without the right kind of protection, be it social, economic or legal. That paved the way for what would become the Child Protection Law. Now, while the law has been stuck in debate and paperwork for some time, it is expected to be enacted this year.
In the meantime, government entities in Dubai have come together to shape campaigns and policies that bolster the rights of children. Well, earlier this week, the Community Development Authority launched one of its biggest campaigns and took Priyanka Dutt for a tour of their recently opened Child Protection Center.
You may mistake this for an ordinary villa, but step inside and you'll discover you're at the front lines of Dubai's fight to protect its children.
Child Protection Services from Community Development Authority, how can I help you? Yes.
From a specially dedicated helpline to a safe haven like this Child Protection Center, to some of the many initiatives that will be rolled out over the next year as part of Dubai's recently launched Child Protection Policy. While the UAE's Federal Comprehensive Child Protection Law is still stuck in paperwork, this policy launched in Dubai earlier this week is already walking the walk. From counseling abused children and their families to having a social worker present at every interaction between a child and the police. It is a big moment for children's rights in Dubai. In the next few months, we will see a federal child protection law passed in the country. But before that, earlier this week, we saw a comprehensive child protection program launched in Dubai. Within its ambit, we will see each and every child in the Emirate be protected against every form of abuse and exploitation.
The primary objectives of the campaign is to create awareness among the community as a whole with regards to the child's rights and the child's right to be protected against any negligence, any abuse and any exploitation.
Every abuse, whether it is verbal or physical, whether it's sexual or any abuse, any exploitation of a child and even negligence. So we talked about really three major issues.
And this is where the policy is different. For the first time, a public campaign outlines the kinds of abuse children are vulnerable to, including uncomfortable truths about sexual violence.
Statistic-wise, locals and non-locals are equal in the offence. Most of the offences are sexual abuses. The ages of the children of sexually abused ranges between 7 to 12. Then followed by the physical abuse, and the ages usually is a bit older. But it's not a pattern really. There are cases, scattered cases. It happens in all society.
When we talk about child abuse, immediately we think it's outside the environment of the child. But in most really cases, in majority of the cases, and it's above 90%, it's within the home, within a family member, within a family, if it's not a family, it's a related member or a friend of the family. So it is something that is evolve around the family itself. And that's where the problem is. The problem is if it's a family member, then reporting that family member become difficulties. That's what we're trying to show the mother or the father, that it is right, it is in their child best endeavor to ensure that the child is protected, the abuse is reported, or the abuser is prevented from the child.
The biggest challenge with issues of child abuse is to correctly identify it. Very often, children are too scared or just don't know how to report abuse. This policy tackles that problem by sharing the responsibility with the entire community. Firstly, parents are encouraged to identify and report abuse, even if the perpetrator is from within the family. Secondly, the entire community is involved, from neighbors to teachers and nannies. The onus lies on them to report abuse if they see it. And most importantly, a school-level peer-to-peer intervention where children are taught to recognize signs of abuse and exploitation themselves.
One of our mandates is to create awareness not among the community itself, but also among the children themselves of what their rights are and what are child's rights. Last year we launched a program where we were in 12 schools, 6 girls and 6 boys school, and we conducted workshops for them, explaining to them the main child's rights that every child should have. And these children or these students then, after having taken, let's say, the training, they themselves took the initiative of educating their own students, educating the community around them. So what we want to do is we want to create a culture of human rights at a very young age.
Over the next few months, we will see several more campaigns linked to protecting a child's rights being unveiled in Dubai, empowering one of the city's most vulnerable communities with the knowledge and support system to protect themselves. Priyanka Dutt, Emirates 24/7.
Well, great to see that kind of centre up and running. Certainly very much needed everywhere in the world. Now, we are joined now by Priyanka. Really enjoyed listening to that report. I think to me, though, it was so obvious just how many people here, children in particular, who are being abused, especially sexual abuse, and it's something that's commonly very much hushed up, but particularly in this eastern part of the world. How important is this new push?
Now, Katie, to me, that is the biggest breakthrough. Now, abuse against children happens all over the world. In this part of the world, we've traditionally seen that any mention of sexual violence is usually couched in euphemisms. Now, this is a very, very positive breakthrough. In fact, I'd like to give you a personal example. I've been reporting on this for the last 3-4 years. And last year, the Dubai police had launched a campaign against violence against children. And they had this very aggressive campaign on Twitter where they spoke about being careful and being aware about the gardener, the shopkeeper, the domestic help. I remember when I interviewed the police, I asked them about this. I asked them that when there are so many known cases of abuse within the family, how come they were not tackling that? I finished that interview, I went back to office, it was maybe 45 minutes later. I logged onto Twitter and I saw that change reflected. They are more open about coming out with this in the open. Even now in this report, we had the head of the CDA giving a very public soundbite on camera, talking about sexual violence at homes. And that, to me, is the biggest breakthrough and a real sign that authorities are very serious about tackling this issue.
All right, with that in mind, I guess, for residents here who do encounter a child who has been a victim of abuse, so what should they be doing? What are the steps now?
That's another interesting thing. I believe it will also be part of the actual law that will be enacted later this year, the federal level law, the involvement of the community. So now the onus lies on the community at large, be it a neighbor, be it a teacher, a doctor, anyone who comes in contact with a child. And if they feel that they have seen a child who could have been abused, it is incumbent on them to report it. And the easiest way to do that, of course, is to call the helpline that is flashing on the screens right now.
Oh, it's certainly a fantastic move. Of course, it is important to remember, as you mentioned earlier, it's around 90% of abuse cases actually do happen by somebody the child is in close contact with. So great to see a bit of progress being made here. Thanks, Priyanka.
Thank you, Priyanka.